Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 5 Days of Merry Making mini-series. My name is Leah Zahner, and I am your moderator for today's event. Now, Craftsy, National Sewing Circle, the Knitting Circle, and National Quilter Circle have all teamed up to provide a week of live demonstrations and a bundle of festive patterns and recipes. Make sure you download yours. They are the free patterns and recipes that you can find by clicking the link in the description. Every day this week, a new instructor has been going live, streaming as they quilted, sewed, knit, and decorated cookies. They will be providing those step-by-step demonstrations of the fun holiday projects that, again, you can find in the link in the description. If you have any questions at all during today's event, please leave your comments in the blue chat box below or in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. I will, of course, be monitoring those comments and questions during the entire event and feed them to our instructor as they come in and we have a chance to get to them. Speaking of instructors, today we are joined by Emily Steffen. She is our sewing expert and National Sewing Circle instructor, and let's welcome her. Hello, hello, Emily. Thank you so much for being here. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and also what are we making today?
Hello, this is so fun. I love holiday crafting. So I am the maker and color enthusiast behind Oye Studio. And today we are making something that is awesome for you to make, and you can even involve your kiddos if you want to. So you can even save this little pattern in your back pocket if you're gonna have any holiday celebrations coming up. Because ta-da! It's this super colorful, which you don't need to make it as colorful as this, but a colorful felt garland. And as you can see, you can also make these bulbs into ornaments individually. If you cut too many or you maybe have too long of a string, you can turn them into ornaments. And the cool thing is also, these could become gift toppers for your favorite gift this holiday season. So we're gonna dive right in with our pattern and instructions and everything once we're ready to go.
All right, that sounds great. I'm excited to get started. And once again, just a reminder, if you've got questions, drop them into the chat box and we'll get to as many as possible. All right, Emily, let's get going.
Awesome. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is gather your supplies. And I'm the kind of crafter and sewer that likes to make projects or make patterns that can be used in multiple ways. So what I mean by that is I've used felt for this, just like a poly blend felt. But let me tell you what you can grab instead. So the fabric is what you'll need, the felt. You'll need polyfill. You'll need a sharp pair of scissors, a string, and then your favorite sewing machine. And I'm sewing on a Janome today because I think they're the best around and they're really wonderful. So when I mentioned that you can use any different kind of substrate, let me tell you this. I love felt because it is kind of a no-nonsense fabric. You don't have to do a lot of finishing with it. There's no fuss with it. And it's kind of a thick, awesome substrate, and it's really plushy. I like the tactile qualities of it. So the one thing though, let me tell you this. If you don't have felt in your house, that is 100% okay. Because what you can use that will operate the same as felt is wool. So if you have an old wool jacket, if you have a wool skirt that was your grandma's, you can totally cut that up. Because here's what's awesome about felt and what's awesome about wool is that when you cut it, you won't have any raw edges. And that's the same with wool. It'll be a raw edge. Let me back up. It'll be a raw edge, but it won't fray or anything. So this is why it's awesome. So wool felt, or this is just like a crafting felt. And the only difference between this and a wool blend felt is just that it's going to be a little stretchier. Not a big deal. So grab as many colors as you want and we can start cutting. The pattern for this is in your description on the video here. So you will need your pattern pieces. And on your pattern pieces will be the top part, which is this box here that we will cut in white. And then the bulb pattern itself. So for every 2 bulbs you cut, you'll cut one of the top pieces because essentially we're just going to fold this over just like that to make it stringable. So I'm just going to make this right along with everybody at home. So download your pattern, print it out.
I'm going to cut in and ask if there are any preferred brands of scissors and things that you use. I know people at home love to know what it is that you're using. So if you'd like to share that with us as
I absolutely would love to.
We would love to know.
So these scissors are some of my most favorite scissors on the planet because they're colorful and holographic, of course, but also because they're ultra sharp. And it's from a company called LDH Scissors. And you can hear that? Just how sharp they are. And I think one of the keys to cutting felt or cutting any substrate really clearly is just good sharp scissors. So I'm sure everybody has stories of how your mom or grandma would yell at you if you used your fabric scissors on something like paper, which is exactly what I'm doing. But I try to only use these and keep them really sharp by using them only on fabric. But the cool thing, let me just give you a tip on scissors since we're talking about scissors. If you are cutting some fabric, right, especially felt, this is especially important with felt, and I'm going to cut some felt as we go here so I can explain, is that did you know that the sharpest part of your scissors is actually like the middle chunk? And especially with kids, a lot of people will want to just like snip, 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 make these little snips, which in theory are essentially just uses the front part of your scissors. If you are to make a longer cut and use the whole length of your scissors, it'll actually be a cleaner cut and a sharper cut. Just a little tip. So that's actually a good segue into cutting these because I just want to give you a few tips on how to cut these. Of course, kiddos can help with this if you feel comfortable with them using scissors. And what you will do is just fold over your fabric. And the cool thing about a project like this is that it's really small, so you can use these random remnants. This was obviously a leaf that I had cut out for a fall project. So this is just a leftover piece. And like I said, if you start at the end of, or the end of your scissors, and you kind of do your best to make one clean cut, you won't get any jagged edges along the side. You see how that's kind of a nice clean cut? And then you can do the same. Feels a little silly to do scissors 101, but I feel like it is one of the simplest little tricks is how to make a clean cut pattern right there. It's not perfect, of course. It's not exactly even, but it's quite beautiful if you ask me. And so you will want to cut as many of these bulbs as you want strung in your house. And honestly, a project like this is really fun if you get an assembly line going. So maybe one person's cutting and the next person's sewing, or maybe you're cutting all of them at one time. But either way, it's pretty fun if you just lay your pattern piece over and over and just kind of repetitiously keep cutting until you have every color that you want under the rainbow. And these little pieces we can use later. So don't ever throw your extra felt pieces away because they can come in handy. So I have some pre-cut. So I have multiple ones here. The first step to sewing these is to obviously get your sewing machine out, thread it, get it ready. Like I said, sew on Chenille sewing machines because I think they're the best thing around. They're my absolute favorite part of the sewing machine is the automatic thread cutter because you can just hit a button and it cuts your threads for you rather than pulling it out and cutting it. That's like magic to me. It's really the little things that get me excited. So essentially what you're going to want to do is stitch from about 1/4 inch down from the top, and you're going to run your stitch right along the edge and then come up about 1/4 inch, because what you want to do is leave this open because we're going to stuff it. But you also want to make sure that you don't stop just at the edge and just at the edge. You want to go up this bulb part just a little bit so that it doesn't, let me give you an example, so that it doesn't do this. Because this one I didn't sew up far enough, and when you stuff it, it'll just come apart. So make sure that the stitch goes up the side just a little bit. So we will place our bulb under here. And when you're sewing curves, you will just want to guide with your hand along the edge. And you can go as fast or as slow as you want. Sometimes slower is better. Sometimes faster is a little better to get an even curve. But look, Ta-da! I'm just realizing that I match my bulb. I clearly have a thing for the same color. It's like a camel color. What you can do also is then snip around the edges if you see any jagged parts that need to be trimmed up. But remember, the fun thing about crafting is doing it, so it doesn't have to be perfect.
I'm wondering if there are any viewers that are not with access to a sewing machine. Is this something that they could be hand sewing?
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because absolutely. So what you can do, this is the cool thing about felt, and one of the other reasons I absolutely love felt, is you can easily take a needle and thread and sit down with your favorite Hallmark movie or Christmas movie and just whip stitch, which means you're going around and up across the bottom and just whip stitch the edges, because you won't, the great thing, like I said before about felt, is that there's no need to actually properly finish the edges so that they'll fray, so you easily can hand sew this. And with that being said too, if you are even like, heck, I don't want to sew this at all, you probably could even use some fabric tack, fabric glue, and glue around the edges. I mean, you'd have dry time in that process, but absolutely there's many ways that you actually can complete the same project. The thing I love about these though is I love the decorative or kind of animated way that these plush out. I don't know if you can see that on camera super well. So you wouldn't necessarily get that effect if you're not sewing it. But that is also another option for kiddos too, if they want to sew along with you. So I'm just going to sew one more bulb here because they are fast, fast, fast. This is why an assembly line is really awesome, or mass making, if you will. Cut them all, sew them all, stuff them all, finish them all. It's pretty fast, pretty quick. So here's another little fun thing about this project. This is, of course, just like regular polyfill or stuffing. And this is what I've used to stuff these bulbs right here. However, I know sometimes craft supplies right now are not easy to find. So this is where your extra trimmings can come into place. If you don't have polyfill, you easily could cut these up a little bit finer. Whoa. Or, I mean, heck, these could be confetti in your Christmas cards. Cut it up a little bit finer just so that it's not super chunky and bulky. And I use my fancy fabric pencil to stuff things in, which I'm sure is probably a no-no, but watch this. We're going to stuff this bulb with our recycled ends. It takes some patience. This is the part where you can turn on a movie or have the kids help you too. See? Never ever throw away pieces of felt because they will come in handy for future uses. You just kind of have to work your way in here. And again, remember, I sewed up the top, so it's pretty secure. It's not really coming undone. I'll do one more little section. Ta-da! So this is stuffed with extras. And then if you want to stuff with polyfill, another thing that would also work, I know I'm giving you a million options, but this is the fun of crafting, is sometimes just using what you have around your house, is you could also use cotton balls if you don't have these. And what you'd just do with cotton balls, let's just pretend this is a ball of cotton, is that you'd stretch it out and kind of unfluff it a little bit to make it less dense, and then you'd begin stuffing. And all you do is take a little bit at a time and then work it into the bulb, just like we did with the other ones. Christmas movie watching during this is strongly encouraged.
All right. So we have a question coming in here
Yeah.
about the color of thread that you've chosen to use, Emily. I know you mentioned how nice it looks and animated. Is there a color choice that can really lend itself to that?
So I'm a huge fan of contrast just because I love it. I think it always adds fun and a good element. And this is just white. So I knew, here's maybe something to think about as you're choosing your colors. Is if you know, let's say you have this color of strand of ornaments. I know that, of course, I have multiple different colors. I can use a unifying color across all the bulbs. I mean, of course, you could pull red and sew only your red bulbs and then take your red out and rethread your sewing machine and then do pink or salmon and then do yellow, of course. That seems like too much fuss for me, to be honest. So I've just done white. Another option that I actually did think about with this is like a dark navy color because it's not one of these colors, right? I mean, this is close, but this is more peacock blue than navy. And that would be a really cool way to add a dimension as well. Gold would be really cool if you have a metallic gold because that could add a little bit of shimmer if you're putting these on your Christmas tree or stringing them near some lights. But I love contrast personally when I'm doing projects like this because I love that if your stitches are going to be shown, you want your stitches to be shown. So, and I know some people like to match and that's fine too. This is where the personality of you can come out in your project.
Great. And we have another question coming in about that felt that you're using. I know you said scraps can be used for this, but if people are stocking up and picking up some felt or any of the wool that you mentioned, do you have any recommendations for the best place to get that?
Ooh, yes. Okay. So I know that big box stores have started carrying a wool blend felt. And when I say wool blend, what I mean is that it's not 100% polyester felt. And 100% polyester felt will do this. Let me show you. I kind of showed before, but let me show you again. What polyester felt will do, it's pretty, it's a good color, but look at it stretches and look at how it kind of deforms when you're stretching and moving it. And that can be a little tricky with projects like this because you're sewing it and then of course you're stuffing this and I don't want the shape to get too deformed. So you certainly can use it. You just maybe have to be a little bit more careful. Wool blend felt means that it's a blend of wool and polyester. And I want to say, somebody can quote me if I'm wrong. It's an 80-20 blend. So it's 80% wool, 20% polyester. I think there's also 70-30. But I feel like 80-20 is the most common. And I buy, so like I said, a lot of big box stores will have them usually by the yard. They're not like the, like the 8x12 or 8x10 squares you can buy in the aisles. Not those. Those are usually polyester felt. But if you look for bolts on the yard, I know for a fact that this color right here is from Joann's and it's just like a flecked, really cool flecked heathered green. And you can tell usually that it's not that it's a wool blend because it maybe is heathered. That is a good tell. So look for them by the yard, or my favorite place to buy them online is called Prairie Woolens with an S, Prairie Woolens. And if you Google that, I think it's prairiewoolens.com, but Google it just to be sure because they have scads and scads and scads and scads of yardage of this. Like you'll look through the pages of blue options or purple options or green options. It's Prairie Woolens. And it's an awesome little mom and pop owned store. And you just order it by the half yard or they do have inches, like square inches, or by the yard or by the bolt if you're like me. We have bolts of it in my basement. So it's a good, all of their stuff is the 80-20 or 70-30 blend. And it's really awesome stuff. And the colors are fantastic if you ask me. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. So the next thing we want to cut are the tops, right? So we have all of our bulbs sewn and stuffed. And then the next thing we want to do is cut tops. And like I said, if you want to assembly line this, somebody can be cutting the tops while you're sewing and you can get this done lickety split. And essentially we're cutting a square or a rectangle rather. And all we're doing is cutting a rectangle big enough to fold over the top. Right? So that it kind of has this animated, really fun sort of animated look to it. And then it also gives us a little bit of a pocket to string. So we're only stitching right across here. So if you look at the shape and you're like, ooh, I want it to be a little thinner, that's totally fine too. But the pattern piece is included. So again, you'll need only one of these rectangles for every bulb. So for every 2 layers of the bulb that you cut out, you'll only need 1 rectangle. If you're making lots of these, of course, it is the easiest to use your rotary cutter and mat. But I don't have that today. So you can, of course, cut them by hand, but if you're doing the rotary cutter, it is about 1 inch by about 1 3/4 inches. So you easily could just cut out in your mass production. But all I'm gonna do, whoops, is cut a white rectangle. And if you don't love that it's white, and if you can find like a shimmery silver or shimmery gold of what really the top of the bulb would be, that could be also gorgeous, I think, for Christmas time. On a side note, another idea for these bulbs, which I really love, is you could easily make these bulbs into an advent calendar. I thought about this the other day. And you could put numbers, or you don't even have to put numbers, and string them as like a countdown to Christmas. You also could, I have some blues over here. You could do a like a light aura ornament for Hanukkah, which I know starts on Friday. So this is the fun thing about a project like this, is it's very multifaceted and universal. And you can let your creativity run with how you're going to use it. So, like I said, we're laying our bulb top and folding it over. And I just like to eyeball it so that it's, you know, even. Of course, we don't want to try and sew it when it's super wonky, right? Make it as even as possible. And I want to push it down so that the top is, you know, to the top of this. So it's as even as possible that way. And you'll see that it lays nice to the top of the bulb. And all I'm going to do is stitch right along here. And if you're assembly lining this, this is the really fun part, because this is where it comes together. So what I'm going to do is we're going to chain stitch them if you have multiple. It does get a little thick going over the bulb, and that's okay. Just be gentle and push it through. And what I like to do before I even lift up my foot is get another one going. So lift your foot, put it down, and you can chain stitch these so that you have lots of them. I'm going to do one more so I can show you. Together. Ta-da! Cut it. And look, I mean, you could leave them like this if you really wanted to, but I'm going to trim them apart. And then, of course, trim any ends that I have. And look how fast that was. And look, I even matched my shirt and earrings with my colors.
All right, Emily, I'm going to slide in another question here for you.
Please do.
This one comes from, I think it's Alana, maybe Alana. I apologize if I got that wrong. She's curious, how do you keep the bulbs from sliding around? So I'm assuming she's talking about when you're working with the felt. How do you keep them from moving around on you?
Under the sewing machine, is that the question? Probably. Yeah.
So you can slide in another comment, Alana, if you're out there and still listening live to clarify, but I think that's what she means.
So here's the cool thing about felt. Absolutely, you could stick a pin right in the middle here, and so that they don't slide together. But I don't know if you remember the old flannel boards from like the 80s or 90s. I do. I was alive back then. What the cool thing about felt is that it actually kind of sticks to each other. Like I have 2 layers right here, and if I try and even like rub up, like it doesn't really move around too much. Like for the most part, it stays in place. So I'm moving in between my fingers. It does wiggle a bit, but it's not that bad. If you want to, you easily can, I think I have a pin lying around here. Yep, I do. You easily can insert a pin right in the center here. I tend to not really like to pin things because I feel like every single time I do, I run over the pin with my foot and my needle, and then I break a needle on my sewing machine. It's a whole deal. So this would make it easy, but honestly, you don't have to, because it won't move too much. maybe also another thing to add, because I have gotten this question before with this project, is how do you not make them slide, right? Like I'm able to pick this up and they don't slide too much. The answer is also felt. Because we have this little extra chunk in here along with this the top piece, it's kind of full. It's kind of full in here. So like, yep, you can shake it and you can move it around with your fingers, but if you're hanging your string of lights as a garland, they're not moving a whole ton unless you're kind of choosing to move them around. So that might also be the question. The reason that I actually choose to, which brings me to our next step in our process, when I'm stringing these bulbs onto my string, I actually love just this cotton. It's like a baker's twine. I'm sure you've seen beautiful like baked items wrapped up with a bow with this. I love it because it's just a cotton. It's very easy to use. You can buy it obviously in Gigandor packs. You could use yarn, would be the same idea, because it's just something that isn't super slippery or slidey. Fishing line, probably not. Probably wouldn't work the same. But that might answer your question if you want to make sure that they don't slide around too much. Just make sure you're using like a cotton thread. But if we want to go ahead and string these, this is one thing I didn't mention in this supply list right away is a needle. You can use a darning needle, which is what you use, like a knitter would use, and it just means that the point isn't super pointy, it's more dull. Or you can use a needle. But just make sure your eye is big enough. And you can certainly try without a needle to get this through here, but let me tell you, it's going to take you 100 years. You'll get frustrated. So all I do is string them. It's that simple. Just stick your needle in and make a string. You could do a pattern of your colors. You could make it in an arrangement of colors in whatever pattern you want, but da 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 da. There we go. And heck, you can even use this little string of 4 and wrap this on a gift if you really wanted to. Ta-da! They're very fun, very colorful.
All right, I've got a couple questions that have come in throughout that I would like to feed to you now while you have a little pause in the action. Does that sound good, Emily?
Yes, it's awesome.
All right, so we have a question coming in about the wool. Karen would like to know, can the wool or the wool blend be felted? Like, so wet felted or needle felted?
Oh, yes. Okay, that is an awesome question. The process to make these, if you were to like, and let me just clarify, needle felting or felting in theory would be one of two things. Either A, you're taking something that is not been washed, like a fabric that has not been washed, and you're cutting it larger, right? So you're probably cutting it maybe double size. You'd probably sew it together and then you'd wash it in really hot water and it would felt. The fibers would shrink and it would get really, really plush. And that is usually, you have to use 100% wool to make that happen. Or needle felting, which is where you take a block, it looks like a sand block almost, and you use like wool. This isn't wool, but you'd use like the, raw wool, and you'd needle felt the shape of a bulb. I would love to do that someday. So maybe Karen, you and I can get together and we can do this. Maybe not during a pandemic, but we can just hang out maybe on Zoom and do it together someday. Because I think that this shape of these bulbs is so holiday and so Christmassy, and it can be translated into a different project that's super similar. And I would love to figure that out. So maybe we have a date.
All right, let's move on to a totally random question coming in from Georgetta. Anyone know where I can get lace trim? So ruffled lace trim. So I'll let Emily answer this as well, but we do have quite a few comments in the chat that are already crowdsourcing some other questions. So feel free to drop in your suggestions as well.
Awesome.
So lace trim.
Lace trim. So maybe this is coming to me as to why this is maybe coming up with this project. You could make these a little bit more girly or frilly or a little bit more intricate of a project if you use lace for the top. That could be really cool. Lace trim. So in all honesty, I don't ever use lace. So I'm not sure I'm the person to answer that question. I do feel like right now, sourcing things online is amazing. However, I don't know the intricacies of ordering lace and how you need to know how to order it, whether it's cotton or polyester, and how you kind of read the descriptions of those. So I'm going to totally defer to the community that I know is answering their questions right now, because I have no idea.
One of the other things that was already crowdsourced a little bit in the comment section, but I'm going to bring to you, Emily, is about the scissors. So there was a comment about left-handers out there that are watching. Someone shared there's a website called Everything Left-Handed where you can get good scissors. But the question specifically that prompted that was about the scissors you were talking about, Emily. Are there left-handed versions of those scissors that you really liked and how you're using?
Yes, I'm like 99% sure I've seen them on their website. LDH is a company that is, I believe they started over in Asia, I believe, but there's a branch in Canada, and they hand make, like, this is why they're so heavy duty and amazing. They hand make these scissors, which I love. They're hefty. If you could feel these, they're hefty. And I'm like 99% sure that they have left-handed scissors. It's ldh.com. These are the holographic scissors. And I have these in pinking shears as well, because of course I had to have a matching set, obviously. And they're amazing. They're workhorses, and you can just resharpen them over and over and over when needed. They're great.
All right, before I get to a few more questions, I wanted to check in with you, Emily, and see, are we through all of the steps? Is there a finishing process that you need to take us through?
No, the only finishing process is stringing them on the string or the yarn or the strand of whatever you want to, or putting one individual string through to make them ornaments. Like I said, the cool thing about this project is you can kind of finish it in any way that you want to. So you could make a huge garland of them for the doorway, or you could make them in multiple different strings and kind of layer them. But however you want to finish them, according to how you want to display them, is just the finishing process.
All right, well then let's get to Susan's question here. We'll have time for just a few more questions before we'll say farewell for this event, and we'll go to Susan next. Susan asks, is there no need to anchor the stitching? So what she means is there no need to backstitch with the sewing machine?
Right. That's an awesome question. I don't know if this is the right answer for every sewing project. I typically don't backstitch a ton. And here's the reason why I just didn't specifically with this project. You certainly can. There's no you shouldn't with this, but here's the reason. Let me show it to you on this bulb. So when we did the outline stitch of the bulb, right, we came up the sides a little bit. And I knew we were going to go across it this way. So I knew, hey, I'm not really going to worry about backstitching too much right here, because I know this stitch is going to cover it, which will kind of anchor it. Now, let me say this. You certainly could backstitch on either edge here if you really wanted to. It stays closed pretty well just because it's not something that's getting played with too much, but 100% if you want to backstitch here and here, that would be super warranted. And I don't know that it's necessary to backstitch up here. If you feel like you want to because kids are helping you stuff the polyfill in here, that would be an added sort of like bonus or maybe good measure so that it doesn't undo. But it's kind of anchored because we have the stitches going in both directions. And I just didn't, simply for the ease and the fastness of getting lots of them done in a shorter amount of time. Because when I make these, I make like a lot of them. There's like a whole assembly line across our kitchen table, which my kids love.
Oh, these are some good ones. I'm going to mix a couple comments / questions together. We have a suggestion that it would be fun to put initials on these as a little embellishment. And then a question, if you could embellish the bulbs with glitter or ribbon. And we even had a question about stringing lights maybe into them. Would they show through? Is there a suggestion you would have with that? So let's talk embellishments for a little.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is why I love communities like this, is because we start with one thing and then we think of all the things that can happen with it. I love the idea of, you know what you could do? All right, here we go. Let me grab this strand because it's bigger. I love the idea of painting a little bit of fabric glue, maybe on the bottoms. You could like dip dye them in theory. You paint a little fabric glue and shake some glitter on it. Now I feel like I really want to do this when I get home. Sorry, kids, laundry's not going to get done. I have to glitter the bulbs. That would be really fun. I love the idea of using ribbon. I love the idea of, you know, what you could do is if you have a sewing machine that can embroider, you can embroider initials. You could cut out initials. My daughter got really into making these with me. She's only 4, so she didn't do a ton of the process just because she can't quite do a sewing machine yet and can't really cut with really sharp scissors. But what she did is she picked out her favorite colors, and she has a strand. Actually, it's really close to these colors in her room, is a sort of like bright pink and salmon and then yellow color. And what you could do, with this is you could, of course, pick out your kids' favorite colors, do initials, add zhuzhing, and like that would be the most magical, fun decoration in a kid's room. Because A, it's like over the top fun Christmas, and B, then it would be their favorite colors. And these are really quite, I mean, you can't really destroy them. So that's really fun. Adding ribbon. Here's the thing about lights. I don't know about adding lights in the middle, because I don't know if lights, and maybe somebody can correct me and make a comment if you maybe have a better answer than I do. Because this is wool, I wonder if it would get hot if you put a light inside. So maybe, but what you could do, here's what you could do. You could use the same template and you could sew paper. I bet you could sew paper lights and then string lights in there. Maybe they would have to be the outdoor lights that don't get so hot, but that's a really good idea. Really, I'm not going to get dinner done tonight because now I want to do all of this. All these ideas that people are saying.
We're adding on to the project as we go.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
All right, we do have time for a few more questions. So I'm going to get, I think, 2, maybe 3 more questions in here. One question's coming in about your machine. Beth would like to know, which Janome machine do you have?
I have the 9450. And I said this before, but my absolute most favorite quality, a feature of this machine is the thread cutter. I don't know if you guys noticed. I sewed the bulb and then I hit a button and it cut the thread. And it's like magic. It's magic to me. This machine is a workhorse. I've sewn mini quilts on it. I've sewn projects like this. I've sewn everything from felt to leather for Halloween costumes and plastic. I made this costume one time with these plastic features. This is a workhorse and it's so amazing. I've sewn on Janomes my whole life, and I can't say enough good about how the quality and just the ingenuity behind why they do what they do with their machines is top notch. I love it. 9450 is this machine.
All right, thank you. We're going to move into colors for the next question here. Christine loves the colors that you use. The palette is great. She would love to know the names of the colors of the felt that you used, if you want to run through some of that.
Ooh, that's a really good question. And I don't know that I know, but I can comment later on if I'm getting any of these wrong. I know that this color is, this color right here is called Blushing Bride. I know this color is called Blushing Bride for sure. This one is some copper, autumn copper or fall copper, something along those lines. This one I cannot remember. This one is a Tide or Tidal Wave, or Tide is the name, is in this one. This one I cannot remember. This one's Christmas Red. This red is Christmas Red because it's a very kind of bright, happy Christmas. And this one's called Grandma's Red or Grandma's Quilt or Grandma's something. This red, see, it's a little bit more burgundy, I would say. I might have to get back to you on some of these colors because I don't remember the exact of them. But if you go to Prairie Woolens and you look through like the blues, for instance, those will give you clues as to what they are. Oh, this color is jade. This color is jade. I just remembered that. It's like it's maybe even called antique jade. Something jade, not plain jade, something jade. It's probably not helpful.
All right. We are about out of questions. So before I send it back to Emily for her final thoughts, I'm just going to run through a quick crowdsourcing, you are all coming through in the comments with some of these lights suggestions.
Yes.
So LED probably would be safe, but we have a suggestion saying I wouldn't stuff them. Wool is fire resistant, so that is useful information. We've got a couple people talking about the skinny lights that you could use as this string, especially the battery operated. I believe the LED lights are fairy lights. Instead of using that string, you could use a string of lights to thread through. So those are a couple of the suggestions, and there are quite a few. So if you take a quick browse through the comment section, if that was something that interested you, you'll be able to find a lot of comments from our viewers out there. So keep it coming. This is really great. And with that said, I am going to pass it on to Emily. If you have any final thoughts about this project or the holidays, this is the time. Let us know.
I love these light suggestions. So let me just ask you, I'm just going to make a plea. If you make this project, please, 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 especially if you use the lights, because I really want to see these final projects, tag me on Instagram or Facebook, because I really love seeing how you're decking your halls and making these projects and making them custom to either your kids' room or your Christmas tree or your Hanukkah display, whatever it is. I am Oh Yay Studio on all social handles, because I would love to see, especially this light idea that you guys have going in the comments, because I think the more color, the more light, the merrier, especially in this 2020. I think we all need a little bit more dose of happy and joy in our house. So I'm so thankful that we got to make these together today.
Oh, that is amazing to hear. And again, keep those ideas coming. And please, like Emily said, share those on social media. We will keep the community going. And that being said, we still have a couple days left of our Merry Making, 5 days of Merry Making mini series. It continues tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are going to be streaming live with our quilting expert, Colleen Tauke, and that starts at 2 p.m. Central Time. Colleen is going to be providing a live tutorial on how to make a quilted Joy Chenille pillow. You can download the materials list and the free pattern right now using the link in the description so that you're ready for tomorrow's event. You can also find the entire mini-series schedule in the video description. Until then, enjoy your week, and we will see you tomorrow.